Wolverine is without a doubt one of Marvel's most popular characters. After a string of extremely popular films, we couldn't help but wonder about the old friendships that Wolverine has made along the way that didn't end up on the big screen. Despite being a little grumpy and antisocial, it turns out Wolverine actually has a heart of gold when it comes to his friends. Must be the Canadian in him, eh? From mutants to spies to superpowered beings, Wolverine is friends with the best of them. Stay tuned to find out who. Check out our awesome video, but before you do that, click subscribe. You'll join our notification squad and be the first to know of new content. Deadpool. Team Canada doesn't get any finer than this. Okay, maybe the hockey team comes close, but when it comes to Team Deadpool and Wolverine, you'd be hard-pressed to find such a dynamic duo. Like Wolverine, Deadpool joined the Weapon X program and was radically changed in the process, including receiving Wolverine's healing powers. So, in a way, Deadpool, born Wade Wilson, totally owes his life to Logan. Otherwise, the cancer in his body would have eventually meant the end for him. Maybe Deadpool is too grateful then, as he becomes, how do we say it nicely, kinda clingy with Logan. Despite not initially being on Team Deadpool, Logan does see the potential in the ever-talkative mercenary and recruits him for a special team. This brother-in-arms mentality forged a new bond of friendship for the two Canadian mutants as they went on various missions around the globe. Over time, Logan not only came to respect Deadpool, but even tolerated his madness and non-stop chatter. Together, the two made the rounds at Deadpool's bachelor party, with Logan serving as one of Deadpool's groomsmen at the actual event. When Wolverine died, Deadpool and Captain America made sure his DNA didn't fall into the wrong hands, as they didn't want their friend to be cloned and turned into a weapon. Even in death, Deadpool is looking out for his friends. What a guy. Colossus. Colossus may be teaming up with Deadpool on the big screen, but on the comic book page, the giant Russian Tin Man and the grumpy Canadian were actually buddies. Eventually, the two mutants joined the X-Men around the same time, and from the get-go, Wolverine and Peter Rasputin were not exactly the closest of buds, but Colossus's goodwill eventually won Wolverine over. Who would have thought? Over time, the two became good buds, often trading stories with each other and discovering they had many similar experiences. When trouble rose, the two mutants definitely had each other's backs, until Colossus's family was killed and the grieving mutant joined up with Magneto's acolytes, something that almost broke the friendship. Wolverine eventually suffered a serious injury in a later mission against Magneto, who removed his adamantium skeleton. Ouch. The experience didn't kill Logan, but it did leave him traumatized for years to come. Colossus eventually rejoined the X-Men, but Logan was bitter and distant towards his former friend, who he partly blamed for his experience. Time heals all wounds, as they say though, and the two slowly ended up being friends again, with their bond growing stronger after the passing of Colossus's sister, Illyana. Perhaps Deadpool will fill this void on the big screen, but we can't help but wish we saw all three of them together at some point. Black Widow. She may be BFFs with Captain America on the big screen in the MCU, but open up a comic book and you'll be surprised to learn that Natasha Romanoff, aka the Black Widow, is actually good friends with Wolverine. In the comics, these two actually knew each other for a lot longer than you might realize. Their friendship dates back to World War II. With the help of Captain America, a fellow World War II vet, Logan worked to secure the freedom of Natasha Romanoff, who was being held captive by the Hand as part of a prophecy that would see her become the ultimate weapon for him. Being ever grateful to Logan, she took to calling him Little Uncle and continued to do so over the years. Aw, how cute. In the comics, Romanoff is actually over 70 years old, despite looking like she's in her 20s. She later worked for the KGB and was often on the opposing end of Logan, who at the time before joining up with the X-Men was a CIA asset. They decided it was best to bury the hatchet concerning their Cold War affiliations and get to doing the right thing. Wolverine agreed, and the two former agents became friends as a result. The two also share a commonality of being from a different era, so their unique circumstances further strengthen their bond. Captain Marvel. While we wait for Captain Marvel to make her cinematic debut in 2018, we can turn the page back and look at how awesome the character and the interesting friendship she has with Wolverine. The two superheroes actually knew each other before either of them donned their trademark costumes, thanks to their involvement with the government. With Carol Danvers working for the government as an Air Force colonel, and Logan a CIA operative who was working with missions with Ben Grimes. Before the whole radiation thing happened and was transformed into the Thing, Wolverine would later cross paths with Danvers Danvers again after he joined the X-Men, and the two would find themselves teaming up again on multiple occasions. Years later, Danvers was discharged from duty from the Avengers for being intoxicated on duty, and she became something of a drifter without any real mission or purpose. She met up with Wolverine, who helped her become sober again during their tenure as a duo. She was eventually reinstated into the Avengers and sometimes came to blows with Wolverine, but they always managed to patch things up no matter how serious it got. While it's impossible for Danvers and Wolverine to cross paths on the big screen for multiple reasons, it'd be really cool to hear her talk about her old Canadian buddy from the CIA in a passing comment. Is that too much to ask for? Nightcrawler. So who would Wolverine's best friend be if you had to pick one? It'd be a pretty difficult choice, but one contender would certainly be none other than Nightcrawler, the teleporting mutant. After the original X-Men team was captured and imprisoned on the sentient island of Krakoa, Charles Xavier recruited both Logan and Nightcrawler to be part of the second generation of X-Men, who were then tasked with recruiting the first generation. Initially, Logan couldn't help but tease the mutant known commonly as Kurt, often calling him a misfit and making fun of his appearance. Not cool, Logan. But Wolverine quickly saw that together, the two mutants completed each other, as Kurt looked like a monster, but he had the soul of a man, while Wolverine was the reverse, having the soul of a monster, but looking like a man. This understanding led them to connect on a much deeper level than Wolverine's other friends. Logan quickly stopped calling Kurt a misfit and gave him the endearing nickname Elf, and the two began training together when they weren't on missions. Later on, Kurt actually died and it almost broke Logan, but death isn't going to stop a mutant who can teleport, it seems. Nightcrawler came down from the heavens and went on an epic bender with Logan to celebrate, concluding with the two friends departing the bar arm in arm. It's a shame this relationship wasn't explored in the films. It could have been really touching and amusing to watch. Jubilee. You may remember Jubilee from the film X-Men Apocalypse, but in the comic books, she actually had a strong relationship with our favorite berserker from the Great White North. In the early days of their friendship, Logan and Jubilee could be seen as having a father-daughter relationship, as Logan helped mentor and take care of the young mutant. As she grew up though, the paternal part of their bond faded with Jubilee's newfound maturity, and the two actually became closer friends instead. In one comic book arc, Logan was actually mortally injured by a group known as the Reavers. After searching for medical supplies, the young mutant worked tirelessly to keep Wolverine alive. She thankfully succeeded, and together, the two mutants became something of a dynamic duo for a while, looking for other members of the X-Men who were left without their memories and scattered around the globe in the attack. With the help of Psylocke, the trio would eventually put an end to the madness that was put in motion by Cameron Hodge and the Genosian magistrates. Years later, Jubilee would find herself transformed into a vampire, long after she left the X-Men and joined up with Generation X. Upon hearing of the news, Wolverine rushed to Jubilee to offer any emotional support for the young vampire, despite being out of contact with each other for years. Elektra. She may be after Daredevil's affection, on and off screen, but this filthy rich assassin is actually good friends with Wolverine. In the comics, Elektra was killed off by Daredevil's arch-nemesis Bullseye, but was quickly resurrected by the mysterious Stone, who trained under the tutelage of Stick. Yes, that's the same Stick from Netflix's Daredevil series. Elektra was told by Stone that she was to find Wolverine and give him any assistance possible in returning to his former self. Poor old Wolverine failed to rebond with his adamantium skeleton and thus was living as a regressed animal being. Thanks to Elektra's previous training and enlightenment in order to recover her own humanity, she took Wolverine under her wing and nurtured him back to a more human state of being. That sort of training actually created a strong bond between the two characters. Years later, Wolverine was captured and brainwashed by Hydra, and Nick Fury hired Elektra to save him from the clutches of the villainous organization, as Elektra was once a Hydra agent and had previous history working with Logan. Long story short, Elektra died and was resurrected again, but with the help of a now fully functioning Wolverine. Decided to go through thousands of Hydra ninjas like butter. Impressed with what he saw, Wolverine not only became better friends with Elektra, but developed a crush on her. Kitty Pryde. The original X-Men were a fun batch, weren't they? Building on the idea that Charles's mansion was a school in the making, the early days of the hit comic book series really dove into the adolescent angle for its characters. Jump ahead to the second generation, and that idea was largely put on hold in favor of a more united team structure, with the mansion being used more as a base than a school. But then came along a mutant who shook up the new establishment. That mutant was, of course, Kitty Pryde, and you may have already guessed it, but she and Wolverine ended up becoming great friends. It seems to be a common characteristic for Logan that he's often cold, distant, and indifferent to newcomers from the get-go, and this was no different when Wolverine met Kitty. Over time though, mainly due to Kitty's unique personality, she began to win over the grumpy mutant. While they may be friends, these two could actually be seen as more of a father-daughter duo, with Logan developing a lot of care and affection for Kitty and looking out for her at the same time. Kitty was later processed by her older self during the Days of Futures Past arc. Due to these experiences, Logan decided the young mutant needed some hand-to-hand combat experience to go along with her powers, so he started training with her in martial arts. After returning from spending time in the superhero team known as Excalibur, Wolverine saw the now matured Kitty as more of an equal, but definitely still family. Captain America. Off the top of your head, what comes to mind right away when thinking about Captain America and Wolverine? If you answered they're both men from a different time, then you'd be right. Both of these heroes were actually present during the invasion of France in World War II and fought on D-Day. Despite being on the same team, however, though, the two heroes were often not the best of buds from the get-go, but flash forward 70 years and they've teamed up again to fight evil for the new Avengers. Try topping that on your resume. While they were both serving as Avengers, Cap and Logan formed a friendship, especially when they talked about their old war stories and what it was like in the old days. Since they both share the moniker Man Out of Time, they found they have quite a bit in common and developed a strong bond over this fact. Despite some unruly behavior from Logan, Cap learned how to cope with Wolverine's habits, and Logan ended up feeling so at home at Stark Tower that he would often just sleep over. The House of M storyline finally gave Logan some peace as his memory was restored and he actually calmed down a bit now that he had some answers. With him being a bit more grounded and humble, he was able to improve on his social skills even further. Furthermore, Cap helped teach Logan the ways of being a hero as opposed to just being a fighter, something old Wolverine never quite differentiated. SpiderMan. Believe it or not, old grumpy Canadian mutant actually gets along well with a certain chatterbox who is bitten by a radioactive spider. Well, maybe tolerates is the better word. When these two initially started teaming up, things were a bit rocky, with neither superhero exactly approving of the other's methods. It wasn't long before both of them were formally added to the Avengers though, and that's when the bond really started to grow, minus that one time that Logan accidentally stabbed Spider-Man during a training exercise, and that other time Peter Parker tossed Wolverine out of Stark Tower. Once that was out of the way, the two fought in Civil War, and the two became super bros after the death of Captain America. They went on the run for a while, and Parker grew to trust Logan well enough that he revealed his secret identity to him. Just because one's an Avenger doesn't mean they get automatic access to one's real name. It's a shame that we'll never get to see such an interaction on the big screen unfold, as Spider-Man and Wolverine are two of the most popular characters in the Marvel roster, and seeing them share a scene together would have been on a whole different level for fan service. For now, we'll just have to go back to the cherished comic book arcs they're a part of and hope for new adventures together in the future.
Patience is my strongest suit.
There you have it, folks. Which mutant were you surprised to learn was a BFF of Wolverine? Were you surprised Wolverine even had close friends? Wish we got to see more of these interactions unfold on the big screen, but are glad the memories are still there on the comic book page. For more awesome videos like this one, sharpen your claws and hit that subscribe button, and a new video from CBR will show up every day.